2 quarterback in fantasy, not per game. He's number 4 in 6 point. He's actually number 6 in 4 point. Would you believe that? But things just got even better for Stafford. Odell Beckham Jr. going to the Los Angeles Rams. What does this mean for Cooper Kupp, for Robert Woods, for Van Jefferson, for Tyler Higbee, for Darrell Henderson, for Matthew Stafford, for the NFL, for Jamie and Heath as they get set to do their rankings? He won't play this week, but what does it mean? All right, Jamie, I'll give you the first word. Biggest winner or loser, biggest impact for fantasy goes to who?
I mean, obviously Matthew Stafford's the biggest winner. He just got an upgrade. He got an upgraded weapon. Whether he's the third receiver or the fourth receiver, it's nice to have Odell Beckham as your stable of receivers there. So Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, Van Jefferson, and Odell Beckham. It's a pretty good group to have. Tyler Higbee as well. I mean, obviously all the other receivers are losers to some extent. The biggest loser is Van Jefferson.
Heath, what do you think?
I think everybody probably loses a little bit relative to what they've been so far. I mean, Van Jefferson probably disappears, and maybe they'll stop throwing it to Tyler Higbee 20% of the time, with no benefit. But I'm pretty worried if I was someone who had Cooper Kupp and he carried me to a first place record as the number 1 wide receiver. I'm worried that he might not be a top 5 wide receiver.
Really? Go on.
Do you think Odell Beckham is just fine playing a bit role?
I mean, we heard different things about what he was looking for. One of which he said was to be a part of a playoff team.
Right.
So I think by nature of him going there, he's going to command some level of attention from his quarterback and his coach. But I don't think it's necessarily going to be at the expense of those guys. They're going to decline, but I don't think they're going to decline that much. So, I mean, Jefferson, if let's just say he's replacing Van Jefferson. Jefferson had 13 targets the previous 2 games prior to last week. I don't know I think he had 5 targets maybe last week. So going into week 9, he had 13 targets, the first 2 games without Deshaun Jackson. Like, that's kind of what I think is going to happen. 6 targets, 7 targets. That's probably the extent of it. And Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods were still pretty good over that span.
Yeah, Robert Woods coming off 2 straight games with 9 or more targets for the first time this year. So maybe you're starting to feel a little bit better about Robert Woods. And now this happens. The target share that I have for the season, and I don't know if this sounds right to you, 32% for Kupp, 21% for Woods, Jefferson and Higbee, 14%.
That sounds exactly right. Yeah.
The adots are interesting. Whose routes are going to be most similar to Beckham's? Jackson was at 23.1 yards, so Beckham's not that.
But Jefferson had 1 game where he mattered. I think he didn't really factor into the equation.
No, but Beckham's not going to play the Deshaun Jackson role. Jefferson, 13-yard adot, much higher than the other guys. Kupp is 8.8, Woods is 8.2. But Jefferson at 13, that's basically exactly what Beckham's been for 3 years in Cleveland. But I would argue that he shouldn't be that kind of ADOT. Maybe he should be more like what he was with the Giants, or he was more like Robert Woods, I'd say. So I don't know. It's hard to imagine. It's hard to picture.
But do you think Beckham can still run?
Yeah, I do. I don't know that. It's just
Pete Briscoe doesn't, right?
Yeah, that I mean, Pete watches a lot of tape, and he was watching a lot of tape on Beckham the last couple of weeks, and that's the one thing he took away from it was like he just doesn't have the same explosiveness. Now, who knows where his mind was at? We're still talking about a guy coming off a significant knee injury from a year ago that's playing with a significant shoulder injury. So Pete says a phrase that I think is probably pretty applicable until we see it: name over game. His name still commands a lot of respect, and Heath, like you brought this up, I forget which show, it might have been the show this morning, about Julio Jones and Marshawn Lattimore, and how players still respect the name of Odell Beckham more so than they respect the game of Odell Beckham. We'll find out. I mean, clearly this is a better situation for him. It's a better quarterback for him. Is it going to be a better opportunity from a production standpoint? So it's a gamble. The nice thing about this is, this is different than some of these other free agents that we typically talk, or moves that we typically talk about. You're not spending a lot of fab on this. You're not wrecking your team. You have Beckham now. He's available in some leagues still, but you have Beckham now, right? So
yeah,
you can just wait it out and see.
Yeah. I don't think I would be surprised if Beckham had a target share below 20%, I guess. I don't
a big boost that compared to Van Jefferson.
A big boost compared to Van Jefferson. But 20% is not a huge number for, I think he still thinks he's a star wide receiver. So if he has 20%, then that's probably 5% that needs to come from Cup or Woods. And maybe it's 3% from Cup and 2% from Woods. That's going to make a difference.
I guess what I would say in regards to the top two guys for the Rams, don't panic trade them. Like, if somebody's still willing to pay a hefty price for them, fine. But don't sell them, and I'm using the word in quotes, low, because you're not selling them low. What's
Beckham's value?
I mean, Van Jefferson for me had kind of crept into the number 3 receiver range. Like I said, I liked the targets prior to last week. I thought he was starting to get a bigger role. I thought he was somebody that, you've heard me say this a few times, like he's a wide receiver handcuff. If something were to happen to one of the top 2 guys, I think Beckham's going to be a number 3 receiver. I don't think he's going to become a weekly starter. The comparison you'd like to make is how the Bucs, when they got Antonio Brown at the end of last season. And so Evans was still productive, but he lost a little bit. Godwin was still productive, but he lost a little bit. And Brown, by the week or 2 after he got going, was, a startable fantasy receiver. I don't know if this team's gonna have the same amount of volume, but if they do, then Beckham could be, a borderline starter in the 2 receiver league.
Beckham or Mike Williams?
Based on the schedule coming up, I would take Mike Williams.
I'd take Mike Williams. I don't know if you were asking me. I'd take Mike Williams.
Yeah, no, I was 100%. I was mostly asking you. I didn't care what Jamie thought. I just wanted to know what you thought.
Yeah, I'd take Mike Williams. But what you guys both separately tweeted the same poll.
One of us was first.
Better receiving core, the Bucs or the Rams, and I'm assuming the Bucs are winning this.
Yeah, I got called an idiot a few times.
What'd you say?
I got called an idiot a few times.
No, come on. This is a hell of a receiving core. And it was when healthy. But I think the Bucs, it's a good comparison because, you could have a situation with the Bucs where if all 3 are healthy, we've seen it. Some weeks Evans disappears. Some weeks Brown disappears. Some weeks Godwin. Godwin was actually kind of really struggling before this Brown injury. And then occasionally, you could get some tight end production there. Do you see it a similar way? Or is it a little bit more solidified, at least with Cup, as he'd still be the best of, let's say, the 6 wide receivers. He'd be one that, he wouldn't have down games. He really hasn't had a down game. He gets 10 targets every week. Do you think it could be the same scenario though, where they're sort of alternating? Everyone has a bad game every now and then.
I think one difference would be is Higbee is not Gronk. And, Gronk obviously has a relationship with Tom Brady that's unbreakable. Where I don't think Brady would want to hurt his feelings. Whereas I'm sure Stafford, while he probably likes Higbee, if Higbee's targets go down, I don't think anybody's going to cry over there in Los Angeles, knowing that Beckham probably takes some of that. Probably the same thing with Van Jefferson. So there's not really a 4th mouth to feed here.
I think it depends. When Brown went to Tampa Bay, we weren't really sure what he had left. We weren't sure if he was the same guy. And then after a couple of weeks, it became apparent that, oh, wow, he's still really, really good. Right. If it turns into that, I think we're kind of in the same spot with Beckham right now. We don't really know how much of that was not being able to connect with Baker Mayfield, how much of that was him not trying as hard because he wanted out of Cleveland. If it turns out he's still 90% of Odell Beckham, then I think Kupp and Woods are going to have some bad weeks.
I know it's wild, but it's the same age as Randy Moss was when people thought Moss was just not that good anymore. And he had 2 seasons with the Raiders, 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns in 16 games. It wasn't really that good for Randy Moss. And then in 2006, he had 553 yards and 3 touchdowns in 13 games. And then he got traded to the Patriots and he had 1,500 yards and 23 touchdowns. I'm not saying anything like that's going to happen with Beckham, but these great receivers, Antonio Brown is a perfect example. They've been counted out before. And I'm excited for Beckham to at least have the opportunity to prove people wrong.
Beckham's 6 months older than Cooper Kupp?
I don't know.
Imagine in 2015, Cam Newton and Odell Beckham were as hot commodities in the NFL and fantasy football as you could find. And here we are 6 years later, and they are commanding headlines in 2021.
How about that?
Great.
So
only one of them got a bonus podcast, though.
So yeah, it looks like Robert Woods is 7 months older than Odell Beckham. And Odell Beckham was November of 92. Cup was born in 93. June of 93. So yeah, 7 months younger than Cup, 7 months older than Cup, 7 months younger than Woods. They're all basically the same age.
Yeah.
If you have rest of season right now, Patrick Mahomes or Matthew Stafford, who are you taking?
Was Clyde back?
I'm
The key? Oh, Adam, Dave said the same thing. Unsolicited.
I mean, look, I think there's could be something to that, right? If you have to respect the run a little bit more. But I would take Stafford. Why wouldn't you take Stafford? He's going to be incredible going forward. He's already been incredible. Why wouldn't he continue to be?
Oh, I wasn't asking you. I was asking Heath.
I'd probably take Stafford, but I think it's pretty close.
This team is going to be tough to stop. Does this impact Darrell Henderson at all?
I mean, more touchdown opportunities, you would assume. I'll tell you this much: you better be rostering Sony Michel.
Yeah,
he should not be.
How intent are they on making Odell Beckham happy and keeping Woods and Cup happy? Because it could mean fewer rush attempts. They might not run in the red zone as much if they've got to get these guys their touchdowns.
That would make Stafford pretty good ahead of Mahomes, right?
For sure.
All right, let's finish off with some Beckham or Landry.
Beckham
or Waddle.
Waddle.
Beckham or Jerry Jeudy.
Oh, I should have included that receiving core too. Waddle, Parker, or Fuller.
Yeah. Will Fuller's one of the most talented wide receivers in the game when he's healthy.
I mean, the guy who loves stats should definitely feel that way. I really don't know.
Jeudy over Beckham.
Here's a good one. Beckham or, well, no, if you said Jeudy, then you're not going to say. This is not a good one. DJ Moore.
DJ Moore.
Julio Jones or Beckham.
Beckham.
Yeah, I think so.
By the way, has there been an official he's going to play next week announcement? Are we just assuming that?
I'm guessing he's going to play next week. I don't think he's playing this week.
My favorite thing would be if they said, you know what, your shoulders are bad. Let's just put you on IR for a month. We want you ready for the playoffs.
That would be pretty funny. All right, look, I'm excited to see what happens here. I think it's really intriguing. He's 75% rostered. So, see if you can get Odell.
Do the Rams win the Super Bowl?
The trend has been broken. The home city won the Super Bowl last year. So you can no longer say that's not possible. I think, they're clearly all in, Von Miller and Odell Beckham in back-to-back weeks. So if those guys are anything close to what their peaks were, which we don't expect that to be, but, if it's 80% of what their peaks were, you're talking about one of the best offenses just added a pretty nice piece. One of the best defenses added a pretty nice piece. The Cardinals are beat up right now. The Bucs are beat up right now. It's hard not to bet against the Rams.
They have to go to Lambeau. I think that would be a problem in the playoffs. If not, I'd call them the favorite.
Yeah, that loss last week to the Titans may come back to bite them because they got a bonus.
A little gift, the Aaron Rodgers gift, yeah.
Yeah.
I just wonder if they lose in the playoffs, how many times we will see the Teddy KGB GIF on Twitter.
Which is what?
They used it, him all in, splashing the pot with the chips. And the funny thing about that was they used that, and he actually ended up losing.
Oh, were you talking about rounders?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's a good one. All right, well, I'm going to go have some Oreos then. Thanks for watching and listening, everybody. The guy, he eats Oreos and rounders. So, good movie. I'm sure half of our fantasy football staff has never seen it. We'll have to educate Schneier about it a little bit later and Schrager. For Jamie and Heath, thank you guys for hopping onto this bonus pod. Hope this was helpful for everybody. Enjoy the game tonight.